Gods among men, Pellinal the Whitestrake walked with Morahouse Breath of Kine through the encampment. As they passed, men bowed before them and spoke words of reverence. Morahouse was young, and this made him capricious, even reckless at times. But Pellinal didn't begrudge him for these flaws. After all, he was the Star-Made Knight, and thus was born ignorant to the sentimental nature of mortals and their gods. However, despite his stone-hearted origins, Pellinal was able to love. He had loved Huna, whom Pellinal had raised from grain slave to decorated warrior. Huna had fallen to an arrowhead made from the beak of Selefellal the Singer, and this loss had revealed his potential to hate. Hate was born of love, and as Pellinal had been enraptured by love, so too did he succumb to a rapturous hatred for all elfkind. Pellinal had watched the lifeblood drain from Huna, and he went on his first madness. He wrought destruction from Narlame all the way to Celadil, and erased those lands from the maps of elves and men. And Alesia was forced to make sacrifices to the gods, to keep them from leaving the world in disgust. Pellinal thus knew what love could do, and that kind of impassioned power was best kept out of the grasp of gods. So when the pair passed through the encampment, and stood on the starlit hill overlooking the Tower of White Gold in all its majesty, Pellinal placed his right hand on the man-bull's shoulder, who he loved and called nephew, and gave him counsel, warning him against his growing love with Alesia. We are Arda more, and change things through love. We must take care lest we beget more monsters on this earth. If you do not desist, she will take to you, and you will transform all Cyrod if you do this. And to this the bull became shy, for he was a bull, and he felt his form was too ugly for Alesia at all times, especially when she disrobed for him. He snorted though, and shook his nose hoop into the light of the Secunda moon and said, "She is like this shine on my nose hoop here, an accident sometimes, but whenever I move my head at night, she is there, and so you know what you ask is impossible." Hey guys, it's Drew here and welcome back to Fudge Muppet. I know what you're thinking. Drew, you spend all your time studying the Daedra. Don't you think talking about love is a bit out of your area of expertise? I thought having your virginity perfectly intact was a prerequisite for becoming a Daedrologist. And to that I would say, fair point. But thankfully, there are many examples of love between gods and mortals in the Elder Scrolls, and I can rely on those relationships to inform my arguments. Being emotionally driven, flawed and irrational are generally considered mortal traits. We tend to assume the gods are aloof and above our nonsense. But love is the primordial force that powers the universe, and it's pervasive in every corner of the orbis. I swear I'm doing my best not to sound cliché, but it's true. In this video, we'll prove it, and by the end, we will answer the question that lingers in all our minds at all times. Is it a good idea to have sex with a Daedric prince? I trust that got your attention, so let's start at the beginning, and I mean the beginning. First there was Anu, the everlasting, ineffable light, and his opposite, Padamai, the corrupting, inexpressible action. The interplay of these forces created the orbis, and at the heart of it all, where light and darkness coalesced, there was the grey maybe, known to most as Nirn. In one particular retelling of creation, these primordial forces of stasis and change are personified as siblings, and Nur was born from their conflicting natures. The Annuad says that both Anu and Padamai were amazed and delighted with her appearance, but Nur loved Anu, and Padamai retreated from them in bitterness. Nur became pregnant, but before she gave birth, Padamai returned, professing his love for Nur. She told him that she loved only Anu, and Padamai beat her in his rage. Anu returned, fought Padamai, and cast him outside of time. Nur gave birth to creation, but died from her injury soon after. Anu, grieving, hid himself in the sun and slept. Meanwhile, life sprang up on the 12 worlds of creation and flourished. After many ages, Padamai was able to return to time. He saw creation and hated it. He swung his sword, shattering the 12 worlds in their alignment. Anu awoke and fought Padamai again. The long and furious battle ended with Anu the victor. He cast aside the body of his brother, who he believed was dead, and attempted to save creation by forming the remnants of the 12 worlds into one, Nirn, the world of Tamriel, named after his beloved. As he was doing so, Padmai struck him through the chest with one last blow. Anu grappled with his brother and pulled them both outside of time forever. And so goes the earliest tale of love in the Elder Scrolls, a tale as old as the universe itself. This sets the tone for all that follows, as we can clearly see that love isn't an experience exclusive to mortals. It's intrinsic to all beings in the universe, and not even the omniscient can escape it. Perhaps when there was only Anu's incandescence and no Padmaic obstacles to play off of, maybe then there was no such thing as love. But chaos brought many things into the universe: variation, unpredictability, irrational feelings. And if you don't mind me being a bit cliché again, what's more irrational than love? And as demonstrated by Anu and Padmai, opposites attract, and together the wonders of the universe are made. The interplay of Anu and Padmai created Auriel the Timekeeper, and with the force of time in play, the other original spirits began to take shape and develop their unique identities. Much like their creators, these Atada were also susceptible to the influence of love. A perfect example of this comes from the Khajiit pantheon, in which we see another love triangle, including the usual suspect of Nur once again. To the catfolk, she is known as Nirni, and her mother, Fadamai, gave her the great gift of being mother to all mortals. Ifa, the Elden Shaper, was a wise and kind spirit. He saw Nirni and wept for her beauty, and with his nourishing tears he created the first flower, which he presented to Nirni to win her affection. He succeeded, and together they had many children. But there was another original spirit who fell for Nirni, and he was Hircine the Hunter. Rugged and strong, Hircine offered Nirni his heart, but she refused him, for she already loved Ifa. Hircine's sorrow turned to fury, and he slew Ifa's champion, the Grat Elk, and now wears the beast's head as a trophy. While Hircine may seem bestial and quick to anger, the hunter loves Nirni's children, even though they're not his own. When Ifa was corrupted by Namira the Great Darkness, he was consumed by chaos, and he struck Nirni, killing her. Hircine, with the aid of Azura and Kanafi, destroyed Ifa for his crime, and one can only imagine the extent of Hircine's mournful rage. Nirni was avenged, and Hircine made a cairn for Nirni out of Ifa's bones. There are plenty of examples of the gods loving. In the Nordic pantheon, Shor and Kine were husband and wife. It is said that Kinnereth was the first god to agree to Lorkhan's plan, and when he died, Kine's tears fell as rain on the mortal realm, a phenomenon that had never occurred prior. Shor may also have loved Mara, for in Nordic belief, Mara was Kine's handmaiden and Shor's concubine. I used the platitude opposites attract earlier, and that manifests in the various instances of Aedra and Daedra fraternizing with one another, and some of these relationships are scandalous when compared to the tragic tales of Nur. Meridia, the Lady of Infinite Energies, was one of the Magnagi, the children of Mundus's architect Magnus. When Magnus discovered Lorkhan's treachery, he fled back to Aetherius with his children, and they tore rifts in the sky that became the sun and stars. Meridia, however, was orphaned, shunned by her kin for the ultimate sin. I heard on the divine grapevine that Meridia consorted with illicit spectra. In other words, she got too close to the Daedra Lords, and was forsaken by her kin. As the Magnagi fled the Mundus, ascending back to the heavens, Meridia was jettisoned. It is said that Meridnunda formed of her substance a great drag lens, and the light of Magnus was bent thereby. The rays carved and focused a new sphere from the chaos, which Meridia, laughing and sparkling, did claim for her own. The exact identity of these illicit spectra isn't explicitly stated. Some say she was close to Lorkhan, a god whom many of the Anuic gods considered to be a Padmaic force of limitation, and therefore more akin to the Daedric princes. According to the Khajiit, however, it was Molag Bal who captured Meridia's affection. In Elsewhere, both Molag and Meridnunda are adversarial spirits. Molag was one of the 12 demon kings, and he was the first to assault the lunar lattice, alongside Merens and Meridnunda. Prior to this assault, Molag and Merrens had fought one another. Molag was victorious, and he imprisoned Merrens, subjecting him to vile tortures. It is said the wife of Molag freed Merrens, so that they could use his destructive nature as a weapon against the lattice. It isn't confirmed that this wife of Molag was Meridnunda, but in context it makes total sense. Meridnunda is the consort of demons, born of light without love. Azura thwarted her attack on the lattice. The Queen of Dusk and Dawn struck her down before the Valiant's gate and dragged her away from it. She then cast Meridnunda into the void and bound her there with mirrors. Some Daedric princes prefer to pursue their subordinates, like Mehrunes Dagon, who inspires passionate devotion in his followers. In collusion with the notorious mage Jaeger Farn, Mehrunes Dagon launched his assault on the Imperial battle spire. His dread armies were composed of Dremora clans and dark seducers, wielding deadly Daedric crescents. One of these dark seducers developed a close relationship with Dagon, becoming his bodyguard and lover. As a sign of his affection, Dagon entrusted her with the Sword of the Moonreaver. Before besieging the battle spire, Dagon's armies razed their way through two other planes of Oblivion. One of these was Nocturnal's Shade Perilous. The seducers within this realm had defected to Dagon's side, abandoning their matron. Inside this realm, we see another implied relationship between Daedra. Jaciel Morgan is a greater Nocturnal, and ruled the pocket realm of Shade Perilous in the Daedra Lord's stead. Dagon's invading force tore across Shade Perilous, utterly destroying the realm as they passed through it. Morgan saw the horrors destroy her home, and was stricken by sorrow, and thoroughly ashamed of her helplessness. She fell into deep despair, and was inconsolable. She cast her spirit into the Dreamsleeve, and hid behind a night portal which she sealed behind herself. All the while, Morgan's servant, a lesser Nocturnal named Daenira Catras, felt responsible for the ruination of her master's domain. She had assured her mistress that the seducers would remain loyal to Shade Perilous, so Morgan was unprepared for their treachery. Daenira knew that it would take an intense emotional outburst to break Jaciel Morgan from her psychological prison, so she asked a mortal apprentice from the battle spire to slay her with an enchanted dagger. The apprentice then presented this dagger to Morgan, who was extricated from her melancholy by the sheer grief of losing her servant. Maybe I'm reading too far into the story, but I'd say their relationship was more than just professional. Like Dagon, Vaermina, the Lady of Nightmares, indulged in taking a paramour from among her servants. Her choice of lover was a little more unorthodox than a dark seducer though. Vaermina's champion and consort was named Galfis the Night Terror, and he was a bone colossus. I'm not going to make any comments. I'm not about to kink-shame the Dreamweaver. There are plenty more examples of Daedra on Daedra love affairs and relationships, like Molag Grunda, the daughter of Molag Bal, and her lowly lover was a Frost Atronach named Nomeg Gwai. It's safe to say she did not have Bal's blessing for this courtship. But now it's time to broach the most pressing question and address the Daedric titan in the room. What about God on mortal relationships? What happens when a Daedra takes a mortal lover? And is it a good idea? Mephala is often considered to be the mate of Boethia, but the queen of sex and secrets isn't the monogamous type. To the web spinner, sex is a tool. It's a way to manipulate and coerce. She knows what mortals desire, and will adapt her form to exploit these desires. But there is one famous story of a mortal who came to Mephala's bed and used her own sphere against her. He deceived her and stole from her a precious artifact. This mortal was named Rajin, and his escapades saw him become a cultural deity to the cats of elsewhere. Rajin the Footpad is the most famous burglar in Khajiit history. He stole the tattoo from a sleeping empress's neck while she slept. He stole the Ogma Infinium from Hermaeus Mora's abyssal archives. He bested Sanguine in a drinking contest. But most noteworthy of all his feats came at the detriment of the spider. According to the stories, Rajin lay with the spinner, and the thief deftly ran his hands about Mephala, purring sweet nothings in her ear, until his fingers touched upon the thing that really caught his eye, a ring on the tip of her 8th arm. The purring liar took the ring without her noticing, and ever since it has been known as the Ring of Khajiit. This ring bestowed Rajin with the power to make himself invisible and as quick as a breath of wind. With the Ring of Khajiit, Rajin grasped the spark of godhood. It wrapped him in shadow so dark that none could reach him. Not the anticipation of Vivec, not even the passage of time. But Rajin wasn't finished. On his way out, he spied the killing word of the spider, the black edge of shadow, and claimed it as well. So swift were these takings that Mephala was unaware anything went missing. Dark and sharp was the anger that followed, but Rajin was no longer there. This may seem like an endorsement for consorting with Daedra lords, but Rajin would eventually suffer the consequences of his trickery. Eventually, Rajin took too much, too often, and the Ring of Khajiit tired of his capers. The ring abandoned Rajin as he was surrounded by enemies, and this was his undoing. A far less savoury example of a mortal copulating with a Daedra lord involves none other than Molag Bal. However, this mortal didn't consent to the Prince of Domination's advances. Lamay Bal was a priestess of Arkay, and Molag Bal had long harboured hatred for this divine. So, to spite the god of life and death, Bal defiled the priestess, cursing her with undeath and eternal hunger. Molag Bal left Lamay on the precipice of death when he was done with her, and while she was comatose, Lamay was discovered by a nomadic tribe. They took her in and nurtured her back to health, but they soon realised she was something inhuman, something profane. Her wounds healed rapidly without treatment, and a feral look gripped her sallow face. They tried to cremate her, to send her to Arkay, but she awoke as a vampire, massacred the women and children, raped the men, reciprocating Molag Bal's savagery on the innocent. And when she was done, she feasted on the corpses. There is one mortal who did mate with Molag Bal by choice, and benefited greatly from the union. This mortal was none other than Vivec. Vivec wished to know the secret syllable of royalty, and in order to get it from Bal, he employed Mephala's sphere of courtship and deception. This story comes from the 36 Lessons of Vivec, so I'll let you hear it in all of its cryptic glory. Vivec left the capital of Veloth and wandered far into the ash. He found a span of badlands to practice his giant form. At this point, the first corner of the House of Troubles, the Prince Molag Bal, made his presence known. Vivec looked on the King of Rape and said, "How very beautiful you are, that you do not join us." And Molag Bal crushed the warrior poet's feet, which were not invulnerable, and had legions cleave them off. Mighty fires from the beginning place were brought like nets to hold Vivec, and he let them. "I would prefer," he said, "some kind of ceremony if we are to be married." And the legions that took the feet were summoned again, and ordered to begin a banquet. Pomegranates sprang from the badlands and tents were raised. A throng of Velothi mystics came, reading the passages of the severed feet on the ground, and weeping until the scriptures were wet. "We must love each other briefly," Vivec said. "If at all, I am needed to counsel the Hortator in more important matters, because the Dwemeri high priests stir up trouble. You may have my head for an hour." Molag Bal rose up and extended 6 arms to show his worth. They were decorated in runes of seduction, and its reverse. They were decorated in the annotated calendars of longer worlds. When he spoke, mating monsters fell out. "Where must it go?" he said. "I told you," Vivec said. "I am meant to be the teacher of the King of the Earth. Altadun Gartok Padhom." With these magic words, the King of Rape added another, Kim, which is the secret syllable of royalty. Vivec had what he needed from the Daedroth, and so married him that day. In the hour that Bal had his head, the King of Rape asked for proof of love. Vivec spoke 2 poems to show him such, but only the first is known. "I'm not sure just how much glass it took to make your hair. Twice as much, I'm sure, as the oceans have to share. Hell, my sweet, is a fiction written by those who tell the truth. My mouth is skilled at lying, and its alibi a tooth." The sons and daughters of Vivec and Molag Bal numbered in the thousands. Vivec lay with Molag Bal for 80 days and 8, though headless. In that time, the prince placed the warrior poet's feet back and filled them with the blood of Daedra. In this way, Vivec's giant form remained forever harmless to good earth. The pomegranate banquet brought many spirits back from the dead, so that the sons and daughters of the Union had much to eat besides fruit. The Holy One returned at last, Vec, golden with wisdom. His head found its body had been tenderly used. He mentioned this to Molag Bal, who told him that he should thank the barons of move like this, for I have yet to learn how to refine my rapture. My love is accidentally shaped like a spear. So Vivek, who had a grain of Iam's mercy, set about to teach Molag Bal in the ways of belly magic. They took their spears out and compared them. Vivek bit new words onto the King of Rapes, so that it might give more than ruin to the uninitiated. The Velothi and demons and monsters that were watching all took out their own spears. There was much biting, and the earth became wet. And this was the last laugh of Molag Bal. Watch as the earth shall crack, heavy with so much power, that should have been forever unalike. Then that stretch of badlands, that had been the site of the marriage, fragmented and threw fire, and a race that is no more, but that was terrible at the time to behold, came forth. Born of the biters, that is all they did, and they ran amok across the lands of Veloth, and even to the shores of Red Mountain. But Vivek made of his spear a terrible thing, from a secret he had bitten off from the King of Rape. And so he sent Molag Bal tumbling into the crack of the biters, and swore forever that he would not deem the king beautiful ever again. Vivek wept as he slew all those around him with his terrible new spear. He named it Muatra, which is milk taker, and even the Chimeri mystics knew his fury. Anyone struck by Vivek at this time turned barren and withered into bone shapes. The path of bones became a sentence for the stars to read, and the heavens have never known children since. Vivek hunted down the biters one by one, and all their progeny, and he killed them all by means of the 9 apertures, and the wise still hide theirs from Muatra. A day may come when we explain all the obscure details of the 36 lessons on the channel, but it is not this day. What I will say though, is that Vivek gained much from his marriage to Molag Bal. He learned the secret syllable of royalty, which is Kim, and he attained the mighty spear of Muatra. But these boons were not received without a hefty price. Great swaths of Resdain became marred by volcanic crags, and a race of terrible creatures spewed from these fissures and fumaroles. Vivek was forced to use his new and powerful weapon to destroy this race, provoke the scorn of his Daedric lover, and kill all of his children. Consorting with Daedra lords can be a path to great power, but even the greatest of mortals have been burned in the process. Pursuing a lesser Daedra may be more manageable, as there are princes like Sanguine who actively encourage it. I mean, just look at one of his Daedric artifacts, the Death Dealer's Fate. At first it may seem like an innocent enough ring, but it seems Sanguine had an ulterior motive when designing it. Its enchantment invigorates the wielder during conflicts, increasing in potency the longer they're locked in combat. Its intended purpose is believed to be for preventing exhaustion when performing any sort of rigorous activity that Sanguine's followers partake in. The ring has minuscule barbs lining it, and it is enchanted to unexpectedly tighten to prevent exhaustion. It contains a faded inscription which, when touched, inspires reckless indulgence. I don't think you need me to tell you which finger this ring was designed to be worn on. Sanguine's sphere and his myriad realms of revelry are a testament to the abundance of depraved desires within mortals. And if you want to be seduced by a Daedra, then there's nothing I can say that will stop you. But like a male widow spider after mating, I can't promise your lust won't come back to bite you. Just as Pelennor warned Morahouse, even among the Daedra, loving mortals is dangerous. The balance of power in Mundus is fragile. Order and chaos keep one another in check. But the meddling hands of immortals can topple the scales and lead the realm to ruin. In the words of Azura, to the treacherous tribunal after they usurped divinity from the heart, what you have done here today is foul beyond measure, and you will grow to regret it. For the lives of gods are not what mortals think, and matters that weigh only years to mortals weigh on gods forever. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. My name is Drew, this is Fudge Muppet, and I'll see you in the next one.